Okay, good morning. We are continuing Tarovis Kuf Dalid. We are starting with Seif Gimel. Okay, so the beginning half of the Siman was talking about rats. And the only case in the Gemara and Avodah Zarah Samachet is discussing rats and shechar or chometz. That's the only case that we know is for sure aser. By other animals or insects we're about to see, it's not clear. We know for sure we learned by, let's say, yayin, it's something that's sweet, and so then therefore it's for sure not a problem. Just has to be batal barov. You don't need shishim, right? Because it's pogame. And what about other liquids? So I'll just quote from the Sefer Madanei Shulchan. He quotes a slew of achronim, and it kind of fits with the end of the Ramah we're about to say, where he says the minhag is clearly, he writes, according to most achronim, by sha'ar mashkim, it's not a problem. Again, the case nowadays is it's not so common. You're gonna wake up and find rats in your liquids, but obviously in the olden days it was more common. But what is more common is today in Seif Gimel. Okay, so let's see. Devarim hame'usim, things that are disgusting for people. Shenafsho shel adam katzei bahem, because it's disgusting for us. Kinamalim, zvuvim, yutushim. You find in your liquid, there's ants, flies, or mosquitoes, or any insect. We're not discussing here tolaim that we had earlier. It's a machlokas by tolaim nowadays. How do we consider it? Pagum or not? And maybe it depends on the food. But let's continue. Shekol adam bodel mehem lemiusa. People are disgusted by it. Afilu nit'arvu b'tavshil. So even though if it gets mixed in, it could be batel. Right? It just has to be batel and eino nikar, as we're going to see. V'nimcha gufan l'tocho. So the bodies became blended in or melted in. You can't see them anymore. Ima heter. Rabba alav mutarim. As long as there's more heter than iser, it just has to be batel barov. Doesn't have to be batel b'shishim, because batel b'shishim is for flavor, and these are ta'am lifgam. So therefore, it's not a problem. Umi kol makom. Kol she'efshar livdok ulhavir masnesed bodek u'mesanin. So this we already learned that. But if it's something that you could see, you could feel, you could filter it out, then you have to, right? Because if there's something there that's visible, or also the case, we're assuming also it's not a bria, it's not a full insect anymore, right? But as long as it's mamashas is there and you can see it, so then it's probably an isser tara to have it in there. Okay, so you just filter it out, you take it out, you pull out the insect that it may have boiled in your soup, even if you had a bunch of insects and it's not batel b'shishim, a cockroach, whatever it is, even if it was boiled in there, all you have to do is pull it out, and the rest is glak kosher. Okay, Haga. Mihu b'chala b'shikra yesh lachush kamo be'achbar. So the Rama agrees by basically all liquids. However, he writes that for challah and shichra, just like we know by a rat, it's aser. Right? Clearly, it's aser a rat by shechar, beer and vinegar. So therefore, lechatchila, we try and be machmer as well for insects, that it needs to be batel b'shishu. Okay, right? Then that's either if it's cooked or if it's 24 hours. Otherwise, you just take it out and it makes no difference. Okay. So certainly by shara mashkim, it's not a problem, even if it's for 24 hours, even if it's cooked in. And the Ramah is going to see, the Taz points out, we're going to see soon. He writes, and that's the minhag, to be meko 100%. Okay. The Shach points out, as long as it's batel barov, it's mutter, even if really it was close, let's say it was close to 50% of insects, and it got, blended in, and you can't distinguish it anymore. It got cooked in, and it's completely liquefied. And even if close to 50% is insects, it's still mutter, even if when you eat your soup, bichdei achilas pras, let's just say within a few minutes, you eat a full kazayas of insects. It's still 100% mutter because it's batel barov and ta'am lifkam. Once it's batel barov, it's mutter, and you don't need shishim because it's ta'am lifkam. Okay. Let's move on to Siman Kufhei. Kufhei is a lot of basics of Ta'arovis, and a lot of it is review. Okay, let's see, inside. Kufhei, Seif Aleph. Din Isser Shanabla Toch Heter. Now Isser falls into Heter. Aleph. Isur Shanishra Yima Heter. Me'eit le'eit bitzonen mikre kavush. So the definition of kavush is even if there's no salt in there, it's been soaked. I don't know if you want to call it pickled, but even without being any salt whatsoever, once it's soaked in a liquid for 24 hours, right? We had other shitas maybe overnight. No, I take that back. That was for Eino Ben Yomo. Okay, I don't know. So anyways, halacha clearly is 24 hours, and that's kavush. And even if it's cold, and v'harehu kemavushal. And the clear halacha is, it's mavushal. Again, it's a discussion in the Gemara, but the halacha is 100% clear. Harehu kemavushal. 100% mavushal all the way through, just like, and it absorbs all the way through. V'ne'esar kulo. And the whole item, if the mixture is not batel b'shishim, so now everything all the way through, let's say meat in a treif liquid. Okay, we're going to avoid basar b'chalav for a moment. Basar b'chalav kavush is only midarabanan. Basar b'chalav, in order, it has to be derech bishul with heat for it to be daraisa. But by absorption of isurim, kavush is a din daraisa, and it's okay. Again, it's a question, but okay. So then hareu k'mavushal v'nesar kulo afilu pachot mikan aval. About pachos mikan, if it's less than 24 hours, it did zero, it did nothing. Ubehadacha sage. All you have to do is remove it, and because you have some liquid stuck onto it, you just have to rinse it off. But as far as there's no blia whatsoever. Okay. And let's keep reading the Haggah. V'kol makom de'arminan kavush k'mavusha. Afilu ma shechutz ha'kvisha aser ta'idei ha'kvisha shelamata mefafea lamala. Okay, so then this is a question mark. What happens if you have a piece of meat, whatever it is, and it's in a liquid of isser? It's half in, half out. So whatever was in the liquid, that's obviously kavush, kamavusha, because it was there for 24 hours. But whatever is above the liquid, do we say that the Isser Balua goes all the way up and all the way down, or it's all connected, or at least it absorbs upwards, at least? So that's the question. Here, let's keep reading, and we'll come back in a second. V'yesh mekilin b'ma shechutz. Shema b'chutz. Okay, so the Ramah brings the first opinion that says it does include whatever is above the liquid, that also becomes aser, and it's not enough just to cut it off over there where it was below the waterline versus above the waterline. But then yesh mekilin, there are some who say no, it only goes by what was actually mamish inside the liquid. The Shach has, if you look in the highlights, he writes, "V'yesh miklim mashachutz alatzir." It's only talking. The only time the Shach says you have to be machmer above the water line, or the liquid line of the isser, is when it's very, very, very salty. That's the only time you have to be machmer. Otherwise, for sure, be mekel whatever is below the water line. And okay, yeah. So that's the Chatchila. The Ramah is machmer over here above the water line. Question is, does it have to be seer or not seer? That's a machlokas achronim. And
what if it's a piece, half a piece is in, half a piece is out, and
That's for sure not an issue. Okay, and then in the Bereitev he quotes at the end, V'afagav da'anan lo machalkin ben kachush l'shamen. Normally we're not machalek if a piece of meat is fatty or not fatty, because we generally say enanu bekim, we're not so sure. So therefore, you have to be machmer normally with melicha and sli, that whenever there's cases of kadei netila or klipa, we're machmer. No, we have to be machmer that it's kulo, a problem. In this case, he writes, if you know it's lean meat, then you don't even have to be machmer if it's above the waterline. And so whatever, two kulas. It could be if it's only a problem above the waterline, if it's salty, or if you know it's fatty. Otherwise, it's leave it as a machloket achronim. Fine. Safek kavush aser. The Ramah continues. Anytime you have a case.
You said earlier you think the kavush is Deah.
I think so. I need to double check.
Yeah.
Right. Safek kavush aser milvad basar im chalav. So we say whenever, I have. It is right what I said. Anytime you have a suffix of kavush, it's aser. In other words, you don't know if, for example, okay, we're going to see, it's a whole question mark. The Ramah seems to say, you find your item over there, and it's very possible it's 24 hours, but you just don't know. You don't have a watch, you're not sure if it was, 20 hours, 28 hours, you don't know. Safek kavush aser. By isurim, it's de'araisa, the din of kavush kamavushal, and therefore you have to be machmer. Milavad mi basarim chalav, de'azinan lakula, the minatara eno aser. But when it comes to basar b'chalav, which is generally anytime you're going to have a suffix in our kitchens, because we don't have treif in our kitchens, but we have milk and meat. So generally, if you have a case of a suffix in your kitchen, then you say azlinan lekula the minatara eno asarak bebishol mamish. The only time, so then only if you know for sure if it was 24 hours, that's when you have to worry about it.
There's no linas lila.
No, yes, as far as I know. Okay. Now, okay, just an interesting thing about suffix. Do you have to worry about suffix? So we know there's other cases. Sometimes we say if you have a suffix, we follow the chazaka, the status quo. Famous case is a mikvah. You know there was arba'im sa, you know it was big enough, and then at some point you look and you go, whoa, there's not 40 sa anymore. So what do you say? So until now we say the dipping worked. She's tahor, he's tahor, whatever it is. The mikvah was beches kaskashas. However, in this case, you see by a suffix kavush, we're going l'chumra. So what's the difference? So some argue on the Ramah and say there shouldn't be a difference because the chazaka it wasn't kavush, it wasn't mavushal until you know for sure 24 hours went by. So it just happens to be it's a question how to deal with this suffix. So the Taz is I think the Shach is machmer, but the Taz, I'm not sure. Definitely the Taz is Meko, and the Pri Chadash is machmer. Anyways, if you look in the Achronim, it's a machlokas how to deal with it. The Kreisi also is Meko. The only time that they agree that it's a problem of suffix kamavushal, you have to be machmer, is if you have two pieces of meat in front of you, and one of them was vaday kavush, and one of them was vaday not kavush. So that's a normal case of a suffix deraisa. But if you don't know if it was kavush at all for 24 hours, so that's the machlokas achronim, and many are meko. So machlokas Pischei Tshuva discusses it. And okay, the Noda Yehuda is machmer for a case of basar, but he's not machmer by most other things. He says, you look in the Mishnayos, there's only some things. Noda Yehuda just points out, it's just an interesting comment. We know that kavush kamavushal works by meat and certain things that are mentioned in the Mishnayos. But it could be that kavush kamavushal doesn't work by all foods. It just doesn't penetrate. It doesn't have that same absorption rate. and so therefore it won't work even if it won't be mevushal, it won't absorb even if it's 24 hours. So normally we're machmer for everything, but on this case of a suffix, is mekel, kind of like a sveika type of thing. Okay, let's go on. Ve'im hu kavush betoch tzir or betoch chometz. Now, if the item is kavush, right, it's all 100% below. Keep it simple. It's all underneath the liquid, but it's very salty. Or betoch chometz, or it's in vinegar. Im shahakadesh tenu ala'ur v'yartiach v'yatchil yitbashel. If then you don't need 24 hours anymore. You just need, I don't know, 5 minutes, whatever it is. It's not clear, but the amount of time it takes to heat something up and get it to a boil, or to start cooking, right? I think that would be boil. Harehu kemavusha. So then it has a din of kavush kemavusha. So however many minutes it would take you to put that on the pot, on the stove, to cook, then that's the amount of time it takes for this to start doing its kavush kemavusha. But just because we learned already that it could be kedei klipa by salting if things are touching, right away. So then the Ramah tells you to go. You can review in Siman Ayin where it discusses those halachas. So, okay. The Shach just pointed out Tzarech Iyun on chometz, because there, in Kuf Dalet, he says chometz needs me'et le'et. So we'll leave that as a question. Yeah. Anyways, in the Bereitev, he brings a little machlokas about that. Certainly, salting, that this is the halacha. By other things, it might need me'et le'et.
Chill base was just water?
Yeah, and that's what most poskim in the Bereitev say. Lamaisa, it's only by tzir. What?
Chill base was just water, and from base is different.
So until now, the first half of the seif was talking about any liquid, and then for the last couple of minutes, we're talking lamaisa only very, very salty brine. Okay, now we're starting seif bet. Chum shall kli rishon, the heat of a kli rishon. Thank you. Shehayad seleded bo, anything that has the heat and it's a kli rishon of yad, has to be the temperature of yad seleded bo. Then it's mavashal. Ve'osar kulo, and the whole thing all the way through becomes asar. Right? We're all familiar with that. Aval chum shall kli sheni eno mavashal, but the heat of a kli sheni mikar din has no power to be mavashal. Now, many point out, you might have a power to cause an absorption of kadei klipa, we're going to see, but to do bishul doesn't do anything. Well, we'll just read it here. V'yesh omrim, shagam kein eno maflit v'lo mavliya. And some say, not only does it not cook, but it doesn't even absorb from one to another. Okay? V'yesh omrim, v'mikol makom hu maflit u'mavliya v'oser kadei klipa. And some say, no, but it does oser et kedei klipa. V'ra'ui lachush lizar b'davar lechatchila, aval b'diavad mutter below klipa u'be'adacha be'alma sagi. So the Shulchan Aruch says lechatchila we have to be machmer that it does klisheni has power to do something until then you have to remove kedei klipa, it absorbs, but b'diavad. In a difficult case, when you can't, then all you have to do is be'adacha. Okay. So let's continue into Seif Gimel. Nafal Eser Cham L'toch Heter Cham, the Kli Rishon. Nafal Eser Cham L'toch Heter Cham. Okay. You have an Eser, a hot piece of meat, falls into a hot piece of liquid or whatever it is, 2 items. The Kli Rishon, and we're talking about a Kli Rishon. Oh, Afila Eser Tzonin L'toch Heter Cham, or even you have a cold piece of meat fall into a hot piece of treif. Okay, Hakol Aser. Right, we're talking about a Yad Seledebo Kli Rishon, everything is aser through and through. The Tata Gavar, Ale Elyon, Umechamamo, At Shemaflit Shebetachto. As behold, since the bottom is on the fire, that has more power, or it's just the din of the bottom takes precedence, and therefore it has, since the bottom or whatever is we learned whatever is stationary, then that's what takes precedence in halacha, and therefore it does able to transfer all around. Ve'ein tzarich lomar deheter tzonin latoch iser cham shakol aser. Certainly, if it's heter tzonin and it goes into hot iser, then of course everything's going to be aser. Aval, this is really the more interesting part. Aval im ha'elyon cham ve'atachton tzonin eino oser ela kadei klipa. If the bottom stationary item is cold and you have something that's burning hot and it lands onto that item, so the thing that's landing onto it is the thing that's on top, and therefore, but we say tata gavar, what's on the bottom or stationary, that's what takes precedence, and therefore, eino oser ela kadei klipa. So when the moving top item touches it, since that item is yad seleted bo, it does oser it, but only kadei klipa, not all the way through. Afili im elyon hacham iser. And it doesn't matter if the top item is an iser, the item is an iser going to heter, or heter going to iser, right? You might think since the top item is a mamish iser, that it would have more of an effect. No, we always say only kadei klipa. Okay. Haga. V'kol ze lo mari ela b'chom kli rishon. As we just said, obviously we're talking about a case that has to be the heat of yad seledet bo, of a kli rishon. Gon. Miyad shemeisir min ha'esh manicho ima heter. So as soon as you take it off, you put it there. Aval im kavar munach b'kli sheni. But let's say you had a piece of meat and it was hot, it was on the grill, whatever, but then you put it on a plate and now it's cooling down. And then you take heter and you put it next to it. Oh, alav, or on it. Eino aser klal, the klisheni, eino oser kamosheni dvar, because a klisheni isn't oser at all. Again, if you notice, we're talking about a davar gush, a hot piece of meat. But the Ramah holds, just like the Shulchan Aruch holds, that a davar gush makes no difference. There's no chumrah of a davar gush. Once it's into a separate pot, it's on your plate on the table. Normally plates, we mentioned by kosherin cheres. I forgot to mention, that's another kula. Usually your porcelain is a klisheni. But anyways, or a klishishi, whatever it is. Anyways, so here, you take a piece of meat and you put it on your plate. Your plate's a klisheni. So there's no problem. Now, if this piece of meat touches anything, it's not going to absorb, it's not going to do anything. Whether it's treif, meat, milk, nothing's happening. However, the Shachtaz and generally all the Ashkenazim are machmer, and they consider any solid piece of meat, a solid item, that was on a kli rishon, as long as it's still yad seleted bo. It doesn't matter how much you pass it around on a tray. Doesn't matter how many kelim it goes to, as long as it's yad seledet bo, it has a din of yad of a kli rishon. Ve'im hinicham zeh eitzel zeh. So you can put them next to each other. Im shneim chamim michum kli rishon hakol aser. But if they're both hot from kli rishon, then everything is aser. Hakol aser. Ve'im ha'echad tzonein ha'heter.
Why is that?
I don't know. Good question. This is not because he doesn't hold of a davar gush. Okay, so let's keep reading. Ve'im ha'echad tzonein ha'heter tzarich klipa b'makom shenaga. And therefore, if I don't know. I'm assuming for the Ramah it would be on a Kli Rishon. But okay, good question. As long as it's on a Kli Rishon, then it's not a problem. If both would be on a Kli Sheni, then you're right. Then it would be Kadei Klipa. Wait. then it would be Kadei Klipa then, right?
Is it a kol aser?
Kol Aser. I don't know. He writes the word Nchum Kli Rishon. So it's, okay, we'll assume that according to the Rama. It's on a Kli Rishon. V'im ha'echad sonen ha'heter tzarich kalipa b'makom shenaga. And therefore, and if one of them is cold, then you need a kalipa. The first case was, but they were both hot. Okay, we'll see. Yud. Let's just keep reading the Rama. Iser sheniach b'kli heter. O lehefech. Amrinan begam kein din t'tata gavar. Kamo b'shtei chatichos. Now, if you take a piece of iser and you put it onto a kosher kli, or opposite, we say tata gavar, kamo b'shtei chatichos, ayin saman tzayidalid, im chatach basar b'sakin cholevet. Okay, the knife we learned already. Aser la'arot mikli sheyesh bo shuman kasher l'ner dolek. Oh, sheyesh bo chelev o shuman iser ubedi eved ein lachush. Okay, real quick, what's the case over here? If you have a pitcher of oil and you want to use it now and keep on using it, and you want to add it to your lamp, those lamps are made with fuel from non-kosher oil, fat. What? Tallow. Okay. And you want to add some oil from your kosher olive oil in your pitcher, and you want to use it to keep cooking with from your pitcher. You want to keep using your pitcher. So he says, L'chadchila, the Rama, right? So there's a chumrah here. It's just a chumrah, that you shouldn't pour directly from your kosher pitcher of oil into your lamp of treif oil or tallow. Why? Because, again, the chashash is that there's steam coming from the lamp, and that's going to travel up, or it's going to literally touch. Again, it depends what the chashash is. Either there's imamish touching, or it's just the steam that's touching as you pour it, and you're going to touch one to another. And the chashash is that maybe that'll transfer iser into your pitcher. But Yevid, it's not a problem for many reasons, such as maybe it's not touching, it's only a little bit of hevel, it's outside, for all the reasons we learned. It's nisraf, as soon as it goes up, it's burnt from the flame itself. That also the whole lamp is not burning hot, it's not boiling, it's not on, it's also whatever we're talking about might be, the zeya might be batal b'shishim, might not be it's yatzeledit bo, and we also learned the whole din of cham mikzato v'cham kulo in Tzadi Daled Ayin Sham that we learned, we paskin it's mutter. And it's no comparison to the case in Kuf Daled, in Tzadi Bet Vav, or Chet, maybe it's, in Tzadi Bet, where it talks about one pot on top of another pot with a huge amount of steam touching it right next to it. Okay, we'll stop here.
So